go. All right. Looks like we're live. We are here. We are here. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning from Philly. Good morning, Big Sis Dula. Good to see you. Hey, how come your name is showing? Okay, good. This is Patricia Brooks. Okay, perfect. Perfect.
I got one more light to put on.
Okay, do that.
How's that?
Well, you look so much better than I do. Your lighting's better anyway, but that's good. Okay, look at the guest. Forget about me. Good. All right. Well, welcome. What time is it there in La France?
It is 4 p.m.
Okay. And it's 10 a.m. here on the East Coast. It's a little gray and rainy, but cozy inside. So, yeah, so welcome. And welcome to everybody who is up this morning to watch us. I just want to introduce myself and my guest. Patricia Brooks from Carefree Expat lives in France. She's lived there for over 5 years now. Is that right?
Just about 5 years. In January, it will be 5 years.
Yeah. And so we're going to get into how Patricia decided to move to France, what she's doing there, and how life is there for her, and how you can find her all over the internets. So if you don't know me, I'm Kat from Rebloom. And here we talk with Black and Brown women who are looking to follow their curiosity and find more joy in their lives through international travel, proactive self-care, and international retreats. So welcome, everyone. Thank you. And Patricia, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much for asking me. I'm really excited to share what I can.
Yeah. So what was that photo that you posted? I feel like I remember seeing it. You posted from Dulles Airport as you were leaving the States. You posted it and you were on your way. When was that, and what were you feeling at that time?
That was January 25th, 2018. Mm-hmm. And I had gotten to the airport really early, and that expression, which was kind of like, was a combination of fear, excitement, uncertainty of what my future would hold, but it felt right. I mean, I never doubted myself, and that was before I got on the plane, before I stood in line, and as I was standing in line, tears were streaming down my face just because of all of the emotions that were welling up inside of me. I had scrambled to get rid of all of my things beforehand, and I was like thinking, did I get everything done? And that was just the culmination of 18 months of preparation. And so that's what that expression was.
Yeah. And what was your life like before that moment? Like, what led up to that to make you feel like it was go time?
Well, it was a subtle change. Things in my life had fallen away. I'd lost my dad in 2010, and then 3 years later, my mom. And so I don't have a lot of family in the States, and I started to travel solo. And the first place I solo traveled was to Quebec City, Canada, because I remember going there as a child with my family, and I remember that they spoke French there. And so I thought, oh, I think I want to go back there because it was such a charming place. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to brush off my high school and college French. And so that is what I did. And 6 weeks later, I'm on a plane bound for Quebec City, and speaking with the locals, bonjour, and they're coming back, comment allez-vous, blah, 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 blah. And I looked like a deer in the headlights because I understood nothing. Mm-hmm. And I was really encouraged because they're like, oh, your accent fooled us. We thought you spoke French. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't. So that encouraged me to go back again and again and continue to practice. And during that time, I got a sense that I really need to be living in a French-speaking country. The language is just so beautiful. And so that was kind of like the start of this dream to move to France.
Where
But
did
there
you
were
feel that feeling? Was it in your gut? Like, where was it an intellectual thing? What was it? What was that like connection? Where in your
it,
body did you feel it? I'm curious.
it's, I'm not really sure I can even say where in my body. It was just, I remember when I was little, my mom speaking a little bit of French here and there in our conversations when we were eating dinner. She said, "Salade, ma chérie," and and my dad also, he took French in college, and so there was this element that maybe I belonged or had had a former life maybe in France. So I don't know that I can specifically say where in my body, but it felt like there was this tug.
Hmm.
Maybe in my heart.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, keep going, keep going. So you decided that Canada was too flippin' cold, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
As gorgeous and fun as the French. I love the way French is spoken in Quebec. It's so guttural.
Mhm.
It's different than the French spoken
Very
in France.
different. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So you decided that Canada was too flippin' cold. So
Right.
then you.
So then living in the States, as I said, my parents had died. It was starting to feel less and less like home to me. And so I took my first trip to Canada, to France in
Mhm,
2015 to see if perhaps I could see myself living in France. And that's what I did. I went to Paris and I went to Aix-en-Provence. And those places were wonderful, but they weren't my places. But
mhm,
I got a sense that, yeah, I could see myself living in France.
mhm,
So a year later, I went back by myself. This was a solo trip. And I explored four different French cities.
mhm,
Toulouse was the first place I went, and it's a beautiful city. But again, it's a city and it just didn't feel right.
mhm.
But
These places that you didn't like, Paris, Aix-en-Provence, the third one, which was Toulouse, yeah. What was it about those places that just wasn't hitting for you?
well, I didn't know. But what I realize now is I'm not a big city person. And while X is not a big city, it felt a little too touristy for me. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the reason why I didn't pick Lyon or Toulouse or Paris was because they were big cities and primarily.
Mm-hmm.
But when I did find the place that I thought would be my home, um, it was just a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It was a feeling that this felt like home. It just felt good.
It just felt good. Can you describe that? Because people say it's kind of like when people say, "Well, how do you know when you meet the person that you're going to marry?" And then it's just like, "You just
You just
know."
know.
You just know.
That's it.
What is
Like you
that? Like,
do.
what is that? You
You
just know.
just know.
Wow.
I will say that it was it was a drizzly, dreary, chilly day in May. So it was not the weather that, seduced me into loving or feeling like Perpignan was home for me. I was walking down this palm tree lined street that I'd never been down before, and I had this overwhelming feeling of freedom. And
Mm,
I describe it in a very strange way in my second book, where I talk about how how in The Silence of the Lambs, this movie, The Lambs is a very, very dark, dark movie, how Hannibal Lecter had escaped. And he called Agent Starling to tell her, oh, the world's too beautiful with you in it, so I'm not going to come calling on you. And he's wearing this hat, this straw hat, and he's in this white suit, and he's on the phone to her, and then he hangs up the phone and he walks off into the distance. And in the moment that I felt this incredible sense of freedom, I thought to myself, ooh, this is how Hannibal had to feel in that moment. So
mm,
it just freedom, it just felt good.
mm. Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, that's good because people just say you just know, and so something it'll just not a click, or it just feels like here it is. This is what I've been waiting for.
Yeah, and oftentimes I think, well, for me, oftentimes it's this place or this idea that makes no logical sense. You know, what am I going to do there? You know, it's a touristy area. They're not going to have big businesses where it could be a project manager there. But it was like, yeah, that doesn't matter. This is it.
Mhm. Nice.
I'll figure the rest out.
Nice. Okay, so Perpignan for a year, right? Or for however long you were. So then the next step was Perpignan.
Right. So I had a 1 year visitor visa, and I needed to have an address for the second year of my visitor visa. And I knew that Perpignan was nice, but it was not quite right. I could not find the neighborhood that felt right. So while I'd found the city, I'd found the region, I had not found the neighborhood that felt right. And I had gone to this town called Serres, which is about 40 minutes from Perpignan.
How do you spell that? Spell that?
Ceret.
Serres, okay.
For a Saturday market. And they have a wonderful Saturday market here. And I remembered that. So I thought, it's getting kind of close to when I'm going to have to reapply. I need to find a new place to live. And so I went back out there and I'm like, yeah, this is pretty neat. It's closer to the foothills of the Pyrenees Mountains. I'm just 30 or 40 minutes from the Mediterranean Sea. And so I'm like, yeah, this is a good mix for me. And so I decided to find an apartment here, and I did, and that's where I've been ever since.
Okay. How was it? Was it easy or hard to find the apartments that you found in Perpignan and Serres?
So what I'm doing right now is I'm renting vacation rental. So it was fairly easy. I know in France that it can be challenging to find an apartment that is not furnished, that is not a vacation rental, because you need to have this big dossier, you need to have somebody to vouch for you, you need to have a job contract typically, and it can be challenging. But for me, since I have gone down this vacation rental path, it was not difficult for me.
Okay. So yeah, speaking of the French bureaucracy and all of the paperwork that they love to require of you to do pretty much anything, is what I understand. Where are you in with the visa process now? Like, are you still on I don't know what the visa situation's like in France?
So I've changed my visa type from a visitor visa, which is a visa where you can't work, you can't earn money on, to a visa that's called Profession Libérale. And what that has allowed me to do is to start my own coaching business here in France and earn money here. And so I renewed that in September. And so now that is good for 4 years. So it's good for 4 more years. So I don't have to go every year to through the visa process. And that kind of also feels really grounding to me.
Yeah. Was that hard to get?
I had to create a 3-year business plan with, numbers that I thought that would come true. Of course, it's all guesswork. And I had to submit that, along with one thing I think helped was that I could show that I could still support myself in that first year as I was building my business, along with the other required elements. So it takes a little bit of work, but I don't necessarily know if it's so hard if you've got a good business idea, or even if you already have a business that's up and running. I mean, I think that would be even easier.
Okay. So you came with a lump sum of money that you had been saving for years and years. That was sort of, you could show to them to say, if all else fails, I have this chunk of change that I can fall back on.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I think that for the visitor visa, you need to show that. That's what you need to show, that you can support yourself for the year. And then when you renew, you need to continue to to show that. And so the reason that I had to switch over was because, well, I didn't have this this huge nest egg that I
Right.
could live off of
Right.
for the rest of my life. So,
Hmm.
but with the profession liberal visa, I think that that was helpful
Hmm.
in when I submitted for that visa. That I've got this business plan and I've got this money that I can live off of as I am doing.
She seems like a good bet. Let's let
Yeah.
her go for it. Yeah. So if somebody wanted, so okay, so 10 years from now or 5 or however many years from now, if you decided that you wanted to stop working, do you know what if you're still in France, do you know what you would be able to do to stay? Have you
Well,
looked into
I
that?
after 5 years of living in France, you can go for French citizenship.
Hmm.
So I am at that 5 year mark, but I'm not going to do that quite yet. I want to
Hmm.
be very solid in my business and perhaps purchase a home here to kind of help with that dossier. So probably in the next 3 or 4 years, I will consider doing that. And so
Hmm.
here it takes 18 months to 2 years for the whole process to go through. So that is my intention.
Okay, nice. So how are you finding the French bureaucracy? Is it as like it's notoriously bureaucratic in France? The Napoleonic Code requires
Mhm.
you get a piece of paper and stamp and then take it to the next office and get it stamped. And then like you bring 3 copies and get it stamped. Like this is
Mhm.
my impression of French bureaucracy. Like have you found that to be true?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that, and if you're planning to make a move to France, I think you just need to accept that, know that, right, so that you
Mhm.
aren't resisting it.
Yeah.
And they'll ask you to send. When I went to get my carte vitale, my health insurance card, I think I sent the same piece of paper to the same address 3 different times.
Mm.
But once you're in the system, once you do have some good benefits like having that health insurance card. It's a huge benefit. So,
Yeah. Okay. So you moved to pronounce it again, Saray?
okay. Mhm.
Okay. What
Mhm.
is life like in a small village in France?
It's the smallest place I've ever lived, about 8,000 people here. And it's a Catalan village. So there's the Catalan people in
Oh,
South
wow.
Queensland
Okay.
and in northern Spain. And
Yeah.
so, I don't know a lot about the history, but, there were wars and all of that. And so they tend to be, what I've heard, they tend to be more closed off, less welcoming. And I have a
Mm.
friend who is French, and she moved to this area and had been here for 8 or so years. And she told me that it took her a really long time to make inroads, even though she is French. So
Mhm.
that was something that I didn't know, but then when I was told that, expected. Now that I'm here and people know me and that they know that I'm not just visiting for 3 months, people see me on the street and they speak.
Mhm.
I walk by a guy's farm. He's cultivating the land. I do my morning walk. I see him just about every day. And one day he's like, "Oh, do you want some tomatoes?" And so he gave me a bag full of tomatoes. So it feels really welcoming here
Mhm.
now. Yeah.
Wow. I looked on the map and I realized that it's close to Spain, but I didn't realize like Spanish culture then with the Catalan, it's kind of a little bit of a blend. Like, so we have a question about how diverse it is. And when we think in the States, if we think diverse, we probably think, how many Black people are there? How many, Asian people are there? But possibly in this case, it might be when we think about diversity, we might think how many Spanish people are there? How many French people are there? So what does diversity look like in your town?
Yeah, I would not say that it's very diverse. I think that um, I did a video and I spoke about how, I typically see one other Black person a day. And to me, that feels pretty good in an 8,000 person village. But somebody might say, that's not diverse at all. But I would say the older people speak Catalan. The younger people, that's kind of like dying off.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying not to keep it up, but I think it's hard. But I would say it's not as diverse as a Paris or a Marseille.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's a small town. Yeah. So are you learning any Catalan? I mean, confusion.
Not yet. Not
That's
yet. I actually dated a Catalan guy, but I didn't learn any Catalan.
what?
So
I'm sure you learned a little. Okay.
it
We're gonna
was
look at
enough for me to have a conversation, in French, the emotional
yeah.
kinds of conversations in French.
Right?
So
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe at some point.
So how was it dating there?
It's been interesting. I think it was more difficult than I had expected. The cultural differences um, were more prominent or more challenging than I expected. I
Mm,
think now that I've been here for as long as I I have a better sense of what to expect. I know, as a mature adult, I know exactly what I want in a relationship and how it's going to what I'm going to need to get that.
yeah.
And so that means communicating my emotions and what I want and what I don't want.
Hmm.
And I recognize that, well, a friend of mine, a French female friend of mine, said that the, that French people can have a hard time expressing emotions. And so that was
Mm,
not something I knew ahead of time. But knowing
hmm.
that, I think that helps me as I continue to look for love here.
Yeah. I mean, Americans are notoriously, um, sort of stereotypically at least, expressive, always talking about our emotions. And when like 5 minutes into meeting someone, we're telling them our life story. And, you know, that's kind of the American stereotype where we're just like, let me tell you everything about myself. And there are other cultures that are just not used
Yeah,
to it. Yeah.
much more reserved, I
Hmm.
think.
Yeah. Yeah. So have you gone around France a bunch? Have you seen other places, either, as you were scouting or since you've lived there?
Yeah, I have not traveled that much in France. It is my goal for next year to really explore France because it has so much to offer. Each little region has its own, cuisine and, different expressions and so forth. So I really look forward to doing that. But I have been to a few places. I have been
Mhm.
to um, uh, a town called Po, which is it was my first road trip, about 4 hours east of where I am, and it's still in the Pyrenees. Um, but I think the Atlantic portion of it, and that was nice. But I kind of thought to myself, no, I picked the right place. This wasn't it for me.
Mhm.
I've also, as I said, I've been to Lyon and I've been to a town called Annecy, which is further north.
Mhm.
I've been to Dijon,
Dijon. Mhm.
yeah, and also Strasbourg. And
Mhm.
very nice places, but they kind of reinforced when I was there, reinforced, yeah, no, you got it right. You got it right.
Nice. Nice. So you are both near the mountains. You're closer to the mountains than you are to the sea, right? And
Yeah.
yes, you're an
Mhm.
earth sign. That's what you were
Yeah.
saying in one of your
Yeah.
videos, that you're an earth sign and the mountains feel good to you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, but
Yeah.
like I'm not far from the sea. I'm about 40 minutes from the sea. So,
Mhm.
but I find myself not really going that often. And I'm like,
Mhm.
well, there's a reason for that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Although it's beautiful,
Yeah.
absolutely stunning.
Yeah. I think for me, I'm a water sign, so I would be at that
Mhm.
ocean. Yeah. So do you have a car?
I do. I do. I bought a car 18 months in. My first year was in Perpignan, so a city I didn't need a car. And then 6 months into my first year here in Surrey, I decided it was time for me to get a car just because it just makes things easier. I drive it maybe once a week,
Mhm.
sometimes twice. And it's nice to be able to, take it on road trips. I have a friend coming to visit, and she's flying into Barcelona, which is the closer airport than Paris. So I'll be driving to pick her up. And so that is really nice.
Yes. So you've said that people in a small town, everybody knows everybody else's business.
Oh, I said that. You did your research.
Well, yeah. I mean, you intimate, because you were talking about you dated someone there, and then people were so living in a large city like I do, and many of us do. Was that a transition, like feeling like maybe you're one of the only Black people there, so obviously, you stand out, and then it's a small place, so it's even more pronounced that you're standing out. How was that for you? Was it an easy transition, or did you just accept it as a challenge?
Well, I never really felt like I stood out, and I think now I feel more that way than I did initially, because one of the benefits that I found in moving abroad and moving abroad alone was to kind of be a little bit anonymous. Of course, Perpignan is a bigger city, but even in a smaller village, I might stand out to them, but nobody really knows me. Nobody knows my history, right? And so I kind of felt that was an element that I really enjoyed. I
like
don't
a
know,
clean slate.
What's that? Yeah,
like
it's a clean slate. But about I don't know, probably 18 months ago, and it continues too, I heard somebody say Patricia, right, in French, but I thought, oh, nobody knows me here. So I didn't turn around and look, and they insisted, and so I turned, and like it was somebody I knew, and I realized, ooh, you're putting down roots here. People are starting to know you here.
Yeah.
So you have to pay attention now, right? But I don't necessarily ever feel like I stand out or don't belong.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're not that American woman who lives in Madame Blah Blah's house.
Well, I might be,
okay.
but I don't feel that that's what they're saying about me. They might be saying that about me, and I might be oblivious. But...
Right. I mean, that's what it is. You are the American woman who lives in Madame Blah Blah's house. Like that's just what it is.
Getting away the Black American woman, right?
Could be. Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
But I think the thing that one of the things that I came to terms with was that I was okay. I wanted to dance to the beat of my own drum, and if that meant standing out, then that means standing out. But that's who I am, and that's how I feel good, right? To be able to do that.
Okay, we have a logistical question about cars. So is the car insurance expensive, or what about repairs? And also, if you have to interact with the mechanic, it's hard enough in English to understand what a mechanic is saying. How do you deal with that?
So car insurance, let's start with car insurance first. I just paid it. I paid the whole year, and it was, I think, about 868 euros, and the euro to dollar is about 1 to 1 now. So it's more reasonable than it was 4 years ago when it wasn't, but that's for the whole year. So depending on where you are in the States.
That's about comparable-ish, depending on.
And then repairs. So I will say I had my controlled technique, which is the inspection that has to be done every 2 years. And while I don't have to get oil changes, every however many miles or 3 to 6 months, that was pretty expensive. I paid, I think, about 400 euros for the inspection, which included the oil change and that sort of thing. But I was not expecting that. So
that's
pricey. But I do have to go back in December because my automatic window, the motor in one side broke. And I can't remember how much that's going to set me back. €350 or something like that. So yeah, kind
Yeah,
of
so that's an expense. That's an expense
pricey.
that, yeah,
Yeah,
we might want to
but
think
I've
twice
had
about
this
if.
one for since 2019, and those are pretty much
Yeah.
the expenses that I've had with it. So
Do you have one of those little Fiats that looks like an egg? That's what I'm
no.
imagining.
I have a Kia Soul,
Okay.
and I
Oh.
have that. When I went to the dealership, um, I said I need an automatic because I don't drive
Oh,
standard.
that makes it more expensive. Yeah.
It makes it more expensive, but yeah, I can't imagine driving around these tiny, tiny streets. You driving an automatic just because there's so much. It's a very stressful thing, I think, for me
Mm,
to drive, which is why I don't drive
yeah.
more.
The streets are really narrow in your town, or?
They're really narrow,
Yeah.
and we're close to the mountains, so they can be really kind of windy. And sometimes you have to reach out and pull your side of your mirror in so you can squeeze by.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cute. It sounds like DC a little bit in some places.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you do for fun?
What do I do for fun? Well, I recently, well, before the pandemic, I had wanted to sign up for a Qigong class, which is this kind of peaceful martial arts. And I found a group that I wanted to join. They were so warm and welcoming and friendly. But of course, COVID happened, and I thought that group disappeared. Well, except in September, they have a forum to showcase the different clubs that they have. And that organization was there. So I signed up to take Qigong. So every Tuesday and Thursday, I go over. Now, this is during the day, so it's all retired people. But again, it's so warm and welcoming. And I, do the Qigong. And so that's one thing that I do. I've also signed up to take flute lessons at the music school here. And that is good and interesting too, because it's while music and notes and reading notes is similar,
Yeah.
the what they call the notes is different. Like I didn't realize that in the Sound of Music, there's the song do re mi fo sol la ti do, right? I didn't really realize that people learn how to play music with the names of the notes being that versus A B C, right? And so that's been a little bit interesting, but I'm figuring it out.
That's so cool. Did you play an instrument before?
I did. In elementary school and high school, I played the flute and then put it down for a very long time. But it was something that I did bring with me. And I decided that I wanted to, now that I am a more disciplined person and that I appreciate music so much more than I did when I was growing up, that I wanted to pick that back up.
That's so cool. I love that. I love that. And you feel like you have more time in your life to do something just because you feel like it.
Yeah. More time in my life. And like I like to be good at things. And so more time to practice to get good, right? Before it was my mom wanted me to play the flute. And so, okay, I'll play the flute. But now it's something that I truly wanted.
That's so nice. I love people doing stuff just because they feel like it. I love that. So here's another logistical question about cars. Did you want a new car or a used car?
My car was used.
Okay. So about how much was it?
I paid.
And that was for an automatic, which would be more expensive than a manual.
I think it was around 11,000 euros.
So depending on the exchange rate, that's nice. That's
and I bought it in 2019. The exchange rate was not as good as it was today, so that was a little bit more than I pay today.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. People are saying, okay, so there's a question about electric cars. Electric or hybrid?
I would consider doing an electric car. but I haven't really done a whole lot of research on it, but I've seen the charging stations here, and I was like, yeah, well, maybe my next car will be that. Why not?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
I've heard though that the batteries, if the battery goes, it's like buying a new car. So
Yeah.
the one, and I don't know how true that is, but that's what I've heard.
Yeah. All right. So, what advice would you have for somebody who would want to move to France? Like, if they're thinking about it, what approach would you give to someone who wanted to move there?
What I always start with is why. What is your why? Why is it that you want to, and this is with anywhere, that you would want to turn your life upside down so completely? Because that's what it is. There is the romanticism of it all. Oh, I'm going to live in Paris, or I'm going to learn to speak French, but then there's the reality of living. So if you if your why is not strong enough, if you don't truly understand the reasons behind your wanting to make this move, it can be, number one, challenging to get everything you need to get done to make it happen. But number two, it can be challenging for you to want to stay long term or make it through. And so that is really my first recommendation. What is your why? And really dig down. Don't just say, oh, I want to, you know, um, be someplace where there's healthier food. Yes, that's important. But why is that important to you? And why? And keep drilling down to the thing that gets you to that core value that will really help to anchor you as you move forward with it. Um, Another thing that I would say is work to learn the language in advance, because it is a challenging language. It's a beautiful language, and it's a challenging language. And when I got here, I had I would say, a solid base of the language. But I also, when I got here, found out that I didn't speak French as well as I thought I had, especially when I was in situations where I felt out of my element. And that was all of the time. So, um, getting a good base of the language before you land here can help you to navigate or feel a little bit more at ease as you figure things out.
Mm-hmm. So, what were some of the challenges that you um, faced that pushed you up against that why as you've been here, when you moved here, and as you continue to live there?
Um, okay, I guess about a couple of days in, I had rented a vacation rental that was charming in the pictures. It was sight unseen, but there was this horrible smell of sewer gas in it. And I had rented this for the whole year because I needed that for the visa paperwork. And so here I am, a couple of days into my dream life in France, and um, I I felt stuck. I felt like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I can't stay here because it was giving me a headache. But fortunately, I I found another apartment that was not too far from where I was. The landlord was a doctor, and he advised me that, well, you can get out of this lease. You just
Mm.
need to have a doctor's note saying that it's uninhabitable for you, right? He says, but I can't examine you because there would be a conflict.
Conflict. Okay, that's what I was going to say. I'm like, conflict of interest at all.
So I found another doctor, to and that all worked out. But that was kind of like, ooh, I think another challenge that put me up against that wall, and my why was, 3 or 4 weeks in, I felt alone and I felt scared and I doubted that it was the right thing for me to leave my job as a project manager and move to France and to start over. It was just like, ooh, maybe my mom was right when she said a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. You don't quit a job unless you have a job at the ready. And so I faced this doubt, and I, sold everything. I was renting out my house in the US. And I was like, ooh, was this so smart? And so that came back to me over and over again for that first 7 or 8 months, and I had to come back to that why and say, no, Patricia, this is where you're supposed to be. It feels so good here to you. You're going to get through this. And that, I think that was the biggest.
Yeah. And when you had those times of doubt and questioning, did you still have the coach? Did you have a community? Or did you have, friends and family? Or it was just like, here I am, having it
So
out.
now I had my coach the year before, and I worked with her for 3 or 4 months to kind of get unstuck. And then I was, on my own, and it was like, this is happening, right? And so I felt really good, and I was, getting rid of things, and I was, doing everything I needed to make it happen. And so I didn't really have time to think about, oh, is this the right thing or not? And then those first 2 or 3 weeks, I was on cloud nine. So I didn't have time to think about, oh, is this the right thing? But 3 or 4 weeks in, it was like the reality hit me, and it hit hard. I did not have the coach. I had friends back at home who were supportive, but they could never know what I was experiencing. They could, never understand that. And so it was not really anything I felt like I could share with them. And I think that that's one of the reasons why, I developed the program that I did to help support people who not only help them to make the move abroad, but help them transition while they're there.
Right. Tell us about the program.
So the program that I have is called the Carefree Expat Incubator Program, and it's for single women who were like me or are like me, who wanted to move abroad, who want to move abroad, but have some doubts and some fears and feel stuck to really make the progress they need to make it happen. And it's a program that has two parts. There is an online curriculum that helps them understand what their why is. It helps them to understand who they need to become to be the kind of person who moves abroad confidently and sustainably. And that means, what habits do you need to change? What beliefs do you need to build on in order to have that confidence to make it happen? And then the third part of the curriculum is all about the logistical, the piece, and the project planning piece of it. So that's the online curriculum. Then there is a part of the program that is live weekly group coaching and mentoring calls, where the women can get on and ask questions about something that's in the curriculum, or if they're feeling like they're not worthy, or they're feeling scared about taking the next step, I can coach them through that. It's group, so other women are on the call, so you can listen in and be side coach. They bring up something, maybe they're having a hard time getting rid of stuff, and you can be side coach and say, oh, I didn't realize that this was an option for me to do, or didn't realize that this might be a challenge for me. Mm-hmm. And then finally, there's the accountability piece of it, where we all want what we want, but sometimes it's hard to follow through. And so getting on a call and saying, next week, I want you to ask me how I've done in reaching this goal or doing this thing I said I was going to do, really helps them to move forward as well. And so that's the program. There's lifetime access with that.
Okay, nice. Lifetime access. Yeah, I was going to ask how long it lasts, but wow, that's awesome.
Which is why, you prepare, you plan, you make your move abroad, and then once you're abroad, you still have access to the calls, to the curriculum, to the private Facebook group. And in fact, of 4 women who have made a move abroad, and 2 of them continue to come to the calls because they find it so supportive.
Nice. Mm-hmm. So I heard you say the project management aspect of it, which leads to my question. I was thinking, as a project manager, like how did this help you create your background as a project manager? How did that help you in this new role as a coach?
I think that, I think there's 2 pieces, right? So you're building a business, so there's a project around that. But there's also, I think that as a project manager and somebody who is fairly organized, I didn't recognize that as really being a skill or something special, right? And not everybody has the ability to kind of look at a big undertaking and to not be overwhelmed by it, break it down into pieces, and take those pieces, get those pieces done, and after some time have achieved something by doing that. And so I think especially with the accountability piece, I recognize that you can say that you want to do this, but there are things that could affect your ability to do that you don't even know. So I help to kind of say, okay, what's gonna keep you from getting this done by next week? Versus just saying, okay, you got that. I'm going to write it down, and so that really helps me as well.
So you asked, what are your blockers? Do you use like a Trello board? Do you use those tools? Do you use this project management tools like that for people?
What I do is I just have as an accountability tool, I just use my Excel spreadsheet, and I have the members in the program and what they're on the hook for. I have in the past used project management tools, but I don't in this as I coach.
Right. Yeah. I'm an Excel spreadsheet person too. Google Sheets. I just like so many things. So many things. All right. So let me see. Small village. Oh, have you made friends there?
I have, but I think it's been really challenging because some of the friends I've made have since moved on, right? They've moved to Canada or other places. And so, but I think that's true. That can be true anywhere. I have a combination of expat friends. There's another American who's married to a British guy who lived in my village, and last Thanksgiving, not this one, I had them over along with a French couple for Thanksgiving dinner. My downstairs neighbors, this Thanksgiving, I went to have dinner with them. It wasn't really a Thanksgiving dinner, but they just invited me. So it's, I do have friends. I feel like, when I have married couples or friends who are coupled, I think that is different because then, they're spending time with their family, and so it's not necessarily, I've got my best friend yet, but I know that will come.
Yeah, that is a challenge as a single woman when it's like couples. You're like trying to make friends, and I feel like people feel it's a little awkward to invite a single person for whatever reason, for no particular reason. It can be like that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing for me, as I've grown older, I recognize, I think initially when I first moved here, I felt, I don't say desperate, but I guess that's the closest word to it, to make friends, that I would hang out with people who I just didn't have anything in common with, or maybe didn't really even like, right? Just so that I could say, oh, I'm doing something with somebody. Now I think I'm more selective, and I'm okay with that, because I think one of the qualities of, I shouldn't have this broad sweeping statement, but for me, as somebody who has introvert tendencies, I think one of the qualities of somebody who moves abroad confidently and who is like me is to be able to be okay and on your own, and like who you are, so that you don't necessarily fall into the trap of hanging out with people you just don't like, just for the heck.
Yeah, some people are more open to hanging out with single folks. I don't know. There's some cultures where people stay married. American's not one of them. So people that would be in the middle of their lives, our age, would be more likely to be married maybe in a small French village, and then there would be that thing. But hopefully there are people who are like, yes, we have all kinds of friends. Yeah. Hopefully.
And I think that's one of the reasons that, I decided to do the Qigong with that particular group, just, even though they may be retirees, well, I'm not that far off from that, that they were just warm and welcoming. So I think little by little, make inroads there.
Yeah, doing things that interest you and you find people with the same interests. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so what are some of the ways that you've changed since moving to France?
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just much more confident. I think before I moved to France, I feel like I came across as confident. And I feel like I'm much calmer. I think I came across as confident and calm before.
I'm sure you
but
did.
now,
I'm sure you
but
did.
now, but now it feels real. It feels like it's not something that I'm stealing myself for, right? It's like, no, you've got this, Patricia. And I just think it just comes with having had experiences that were hard, and that sometimes continue to be hard, but that I've managed to make it through. So I'm like, oh, you did this and you did this. Oh, you can do this. So I definitely, the level of confidence I feel is huge. And I don't know, I feel happier.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Nice. And I'm sure that you came off as confident. I mean, you just seem very like, you do, you feel it's maybe it's that mountain feeling of like grounded and solid and like, here it is.
Yeah. Thank you. I think, yes, as I said, I think it was the appearance, but sometimes inside it was more like, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to handle this on the surface?
Yeah, it's a
Now
performance.
it's like, okay, the surface matches how I feel inside.
That's perfect. I love that. I love that. Let's see. Okay, so it sounds like you're feeling like France is long term, indefinitely. There's no sort of endpoint for you right now.
Right.
Sounding like this is where you are and will be.
For the unforeseeable future.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wonderful. All right. If anybody has a question, please type it into the chat while we have Patricia here. Yeah, I think that's all the questions that I had for you. Talked about visas. We talked about where you are. What do you like most about your town?
It's so beautiful. I think that I think I like the beauty of it and the history of it, right? So it's the streets are lined with these plane trees, and they're historic monuments, right? They're so old. And
are plane trees the ones that are really tall and skinny?
No, they've got big trunks and they've got pretty big leaves. And it's just so quaint, right? I just walk. I go on my morning walk, and I go up through the mountains. You know, not too high. But then when I come down and I come back into the village, I often find myself just smiling, just because it is so charming. It is so delightful. And then that coupled with the history of it all, like it was there were ramparts, there were walls. It was a walled city, and so there were remnants of that. And Picasso came, and his friends came and painted. And so not too far. I mean, actually, I can see out the window now where he and his other friend, painter friend, would stay when they were in town, right?
Oh,
and
wow.
on the door. On the doorbell, there is a sign that says Picasso. I mean, it's not there anymore.
Right. Oh, that's super cool.
That history is really pretty neat.
Right. Are there still remnants of the wall of the
Yes.
ramparts?
Yes, there are two entries that are still standing. Yeah.
Wow. Very cool. Okay. How old is too old to make the move to France?
I would say, I think that's really a personal call, but I don't think that you're ever too old. If you have this dream in your heart, you're still kicking. If you will have regrets about not making the move, then you're not too old.
Yeah. To to like say, oh, I'm too old now, and then not do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I feel like everything, happens in its own time. I did it at 51, but I have women in my program who are 65. And while one woman who's 65, she moved to Mexico, there's another woman who wants to move to France and she's 65. So, yeah,
Yeah.
never too old.
Yeah, and I'm sure it depends on your life circumstance. I mean, yeah, I don't.
I think if you have
Time is a construct.
I think if you have a lot of health issues,
Yeah.
actually did have a French American friend who was living in Perpignan with her daughter and son-in-law, and they moved here just before COVID, and they stayed here a couple of years, and she had a lot of health issues, and it was really challenging to navigate healthcare in a language that's not your own. It's hard to advocate for yourself. And so I think that was the thing that, coupled with COVID, because their life really wasn't like the kind of life they had expected, was the thing that caused them to move back. So I think that is definitely a consideration too, is, if, and I will say that there was an older couple here in Saray who moved to Nice because they wouldn't need a car, and also that they could have a doctor or doctors who spoke English. And so that was a deciding factor. So I think
yes, and yes. So one, you don't have to stay there if it's not working out. You can move somewhere else. You can move back to where you came from. You can find a place that's warmer, better transportation, or English-speaking physician. Specialty care that you might need if you develop a condition. So, as they say, you're not a tree. You don't have to stay where you are. Yeah, regardless. What's the weather like where you are? So I think you answered the question about the beach. You're like 20 to 40 minutes away from the beach. Is that right?
A 40-minute car ride. If I take the bus, it'll take me an hour and a half to get there. So not too far. The weather here is, I'm from Richmond, Virginia, so the weather there's pretty moderate. In the winter, sometimes it's cold and it snows there. Here, the temperatures are pretty much similar to Richmond. I think we may be 5 or 10 degrees warmer most of the time. I've been here for 5 years and I have seen snow once. And it was the day after I spoke to my aunt who asked me, "Oh, does it ever snow there?" I'm like, "Oh, no, I never snowed here."
Never say never.
There was snow on the ground, but it was just the dusting, and by the afternoon. It's pretty mild.
Nice. That's because you're so far south. But I was thinking that because it's near the mountains, it would be like there's like maybe cold air coming up off the.
We have what they call the tramontana, and that is, they name the winds here, right? You got the Mistral, and then here in this region is the tramontana. So it's the wind coming off of the mountains and off the sea, and I'm not sure. And we get that. And my first February here, I was surprised by the wind. The palm trees on that palm tree lined street I spoke of were like this, most of 3 days, because it comes in series of 3, 5, or 7 days. And this wind, and if it's cold out, the wind that goes right through. So we do have.
Okay. All right. There's a trick there. So the palm trees, but we got the hawk too. So. Okay. Nice. Okay. So what was it like during the during COVID lockdowns? Was it super? It was pretty strict, I thought, right, in France.
It was. I guess fortunately I missed the first round of lockdowns there because I had decided I was going to come back to the States, and I got stuck in the U.S. was planning to come back for 3 weeks, and I was in the U.S. for 3 months instead. So I didn't experience that first round, but what I've heard was it was pretty strict. The second round of lockdowns, they still had the document the justificative that you had to fill out, where you were going and why, if it was further than like a mile from your house or whatever. And you had to have that on you in case somebody asked you for it. Now, during the second lockdown, I always did that, but nobody ever asked me. My ex-boyfriend did travel outside of the curfew hours, and he was pulled over and told, yeah, you shouldn't be doing that. So, yeah, it was pretty strict. One thing I will say is that first lockdown, kids were out of school, but they went back to school, and I think they're much more well-adjusted because of it.
Right. I wanted to ask about healthcare. Just have you been able to find a physician, dentist?
I laugh because my doctor had been my second landlord, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right. And that was a great situation, but he is 67 years old and he is semi-retired. So I am looking for another doctor. And just this week, I called the two doctors that he recommended in my small village, and they're not accepting new patients. Their panel is not open. Right. So I called the agency that handles the carte vitale and said, okay, I don't know the tricks. I'm not from here. I don't know the tricks. I don't have, the connections that could help me find a doctor. What do I do? And she told me that here's a piece of that red tape, that administration. So here's the address that you need to send a physical letter to, saying that you're struggling to find a doctor in your area who's accepting new patients. So put that in the mail, and then they'll send you a list of doctors who have open panels. So I put that in the mail today, and so.
Right, and they're going to send you eventually a piece of some paper with the list. Okay, and then you have to call them on the phone and go through each of those
to see if they're truly accepting, right?
So, right.
And I think one of the things I might have to go to Perpignan, which is a little far for a doctor, but there will be more doctors there. And the reason, I think one of the reasons that France struggles is like the rural areas and the smaller villages is because, well, doctors want to go to the bigger cities, but also they put limits on the number of people who can go through medical school, and they have since increased the limits, but it's going to take a little while for for them to catch up, and then will those doctors want to be in a more rural area?
Right. Are you looking for a doctor who speaks English, or it doesn't matter to you?
That would be nice, but I'm okay with not, I'm okay with muddling through.
Got it.
Yeah. Got it. And then as for a dentist, I found a dentist, and that's fine.
Nice. Okay, Patricia, we've got an hour under our belts. I think we've got good questions, and I believe that we've covered everything that we needed to cover. So I will put a link to your website and to your YouTube channel in the description. And is there anything else that you wanted to share with folks?
I just want to thank you and everybody who has tuned in for having me and for asking such wonderful questions. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, everyone. And have a wonderful Sunday. And thanks for tuning in. I love you all. Thanks so much. Bye, everyone. Bye.